I'm back in Washington, D.C., trying to make a difference for Israel by meeting with true friends of Israel in these crazy times. While here, I want to share a theory regarding U.S. government policy vis-a-vis Israel and specifically current events. The theory is a simple one, that whenever a non-supportive U.S. government is against Israeli policies and decisions, then that is a good thing for Israel and the Jews. So we should do it and go against the disagreement of the non-supportive U.S. government. Well, the Biden-Harris administration was against Israel sending our IDF into Gaza. Well, then it was the right thing for Israel to do. The Biden-Harris administration were against Israel going into Rafah, and they pressured us by withholding weapons, continuing to do so today. With Harris continuing to say that today, stopping us for months and literally leading to the deaths of our captives in Gaza. Well, then it's a good thing that Israel went into Rafah, as we finally did. The Biden-Harris administration are against military activity against Iran, Hezbollah, and Lebanon. Well, then that's the right thing for us to do. What am I referring to today that fits into that theory? Well, before the unbelievable Operation Circumcision that targeted thousands of Hezbollah terrorists, a pinpoint attack without Israel even shooting one bullet, an operation like never done before, the latest news in Israel was the possibility that Prime Minister Netanyahu is planning on switching Defense Minister Gallant with someone else. And of course, the Biden administration couldn't keep quiet and sent messages to Israel not to switch out Defense Minister Gallant. As Israeli journalist from the White House, Barak Ravid, recently published, and I'm quoting him, "A U.S. official told me it would be crazy of Netanyahu to fire an experienced Minister of Defense like Yoav Gallant amid a war in Gaza, and as Israel might be heading towards a possible all-out war in Lebanon," end quote. Isn't it interesting? They don't want us to go to war in Lebanon, but here they're saying don't change the defense minister because of a possible war. Well, not surprisingly, not only is the Biden-Harris administration against removing Defense Minister Gallant, but the political left in Israel is going crazy as well about him being switched. Now, why is the Biden administration getting involved in an internal Israeli political appointment issue? If people remember correctly, the Biden administration did not say anything when Ukrainian President Zelensky decided to switch his defense minister in the middle of the Russia-Ukraine war. So why now in Israel with Gallant is the Biden administration making itself heard and being against our internal political move if it's done? To make matters even more confusing, we have to take a step back and remember that a few years ago, today's Defense Minister Gallant was supposed to be appointed IDF Chief of Staff, and it was the political left, together with Israel's establishment media, that went crazy trying to torpedo the appointment, which they succeeded in doing, with the help of the justice system, who just happened to conveniently at that time find a building violation code on Gallant's property that ended up torpedoing his appointment. So then they didn't want him, but today they're protesting to bring the country down if he's fired. The other confusing thing is that the protest movement for the captives has also come out in force trying to stop the replacement of Gallant as defense minister. Why? Well, they say that switching the defense minister will hurt chances to save the captives. However, this is quite puzzling because the protest movement for months for the captives has been at the forefront at the protest to topple the whole government and go to elections in the middle of this existential war. So according to the leaders of this protest movement for the captives, toppling the government in the middle of the war is okay and wouldn't hurt the chances to save the captives, but switching the defense minister in the middle of the war, that is problematic. I mean, the hypocrisy screams to high heavens. So putting all the pieces together, it is quite clear that this is all about politics. Nothing about saving the captives or helping Israel win the war. There's something about Gallant that the Biden administration and the political left in Israel want to have remain in the government. So for everyone following the news in Israel, it is clear that Gallant has been in internal opposition to Netanyahu on all issues, on Rafah, on the Philadelphia corridor, and everything. Not a good way for a prime minister and a defense minister to work together and win a war. And it started even before the war, with Gallant going against his own campaign promises on the need for judicial reform. He promised the voters, vote for me in the primaries in order so we could get judicial reform. And then Gallant was silent as a disastrous and destructive anti-judicial reform protest movement led by the Achim LaNeshek organization used the army and the threat to refuse to serve in the army, which basically showed our enemies we don't have an army prepared, as pressure to stop the judicial reform. Netanyahu then fired Gallant for literally going against the government, and the protest movement took to the streets to literally destroy the government, seeing Gallant as their savior. And they torpedoed his being fired then, and he remained as defense minister. Fast forwarding to today, once again, that same protest movement, today in the name of the captives, right? Then it was the name of the judicial reform, now it's the name of the captives, is threatening to protest in the streets if Gallant is fired once again. Why? Well, it is now clear that Gallant, even though an appointee of Netanyahu, has been in opposition in the government, most probably taking orders from, you guessed it, the White House here in Washington, D.C., and the Biden administration, with Israel's protest movement in trying to stop the Israeli government to do what is necessary to win this war and topple the Netanyahu government. The interesting thing is that in the beginning of the war, Gallant was still a good guy. Immediately when the war began, after October 7th, he called for the utter destruction of Hamas and Hezbollah, either destruction or surrender, and from the north as well. But with time during the war, he changed his tune and spoke continuously, pushing the Biden administration's positions of not going into Rafiah, of giving up the Philadelphia corridor, not going to war against Hezbollah up north, making a diplomatic deal that we all know can't be trusted because the international community has never enforced UN resolutions. So, just to add some additional context, with the outset of the war, Netanyahu invited all the Zionist parties of Israeli politics into the government in order to fight the war together, in unity, putting all other issues aside. The only opposition party to join was Benny Gantz's party. Even though we were fighting an existential war, and unity is clearly a necessity at the political level to bring the people together in order to unite the people and fight without internal politics, still, Yair Lapid and Victor Lieberman, and they wouldn't join with their parties in the government to make it a unity government. The establishment media never dealt with the fact that they refused to join a unity government to fight this existential war to save the Jewish people and the Jewish state of Israel. We were all thankful that Benny Gantz and his party did join the unity government to fight this war in unity. However, throughout the war, Gantz was constantly publicly blaming Netanyahu for there not being a deal with Hamas to free the captives, and he was also pushing the talking points of the Biden administration. So even though Gantz joined the government, he then left the government in the middle of the war. Why? Because he was playing politics the whole time, most likely taking orders from the Biden administration here in Washington and acting as an opposition to the war effort from the war cabinet in order to topple Netanyahu and his government. Only now has Gantz been publicly stating that Hamas is the one to blame for no deal ever being made, showcasing on his own how he lied the whole time while he was in the government when he was blaming Netanyahu, pushing the Biden talking points, that he was playing politics the whole time, with Gantz betraying the people and having his party leave the unity government in the middle of this existential war. The Biden administration then switched over to using Gallant, the defense minister, as leverage against Netanyahu and against our war effort in the government. That is the backstory to understand why Netanyahu wants to finally replace Gallant as defense minister, and to understand why the Biden administration is actively trying to pressure Netanyahu to not replace him. Hence my theory, anything this Biden administration or non-support of U.S. government's push is good for Israel. The utter insanity of it all is that even if Netanyahu succeeds in replacing Gallant, right now it is being talked about him replacing him with another politician named Gideon Sa'ar, who, even though a right-winger, has his hand in the destructive justice system, as it was he who appointed the current Attorney General during a previous government, and this Attorney General is literally working against the government day after day and leading to a consistent loss of trust in the justice system itself. Here's the irony. It will be that if this Attorney General appointed by Gideon Sa'ar uses the justice system to forbid the government from appointing Gideon Sa'ar to replace Defense Minister Gallant, as the political left is calling to do, even though that Attorney General was appointed by Sa'ar herself to her position. So we'll see if that takes place, but it's very possible that it will. And through all this drama, we the people want to win this war. as soon as possible, save our captives while destroying Hamas and Hezbollah, as well as ending the octopus terror threat of Iran, in order that we can have safety and security, with all of our southern and northern residents being able to return to their homes without ever having to fear of any terror or terrorist infiltration in their homes ever again. But the political left in Israel prefers to focus on toppling a government in the middle of an existential war, because unfortunately the leaders of that tiny elite leaders of that political left, they hate their fellow Jews more than they hate our genocidal enemy. And unfortunately they're playing according to the rules and the directives of the Biden administration. As I always say, we will overcome it all. We will overcome our external enemies, we will overcome international pressure and our internal challenges. The people of Israel are stronger and more united than ever before. Just ignore the agenda-driven establishment media that acts as a PR arm for the destructive political left. Stick with me at the Pulse of Israel for the belief-based, inspiring, politically incorrect truth in order to help the whole freedom-loving world, because it's the political incorrect truth about Israel, the Jewish people, and the freedom-loving world. It's up to us. We must be empowered. We must empower the right politicians, because they're not leaders, they are followers, and they are supposed to follow us, their voters. Signing off from Washington, D.C. Can't wait to be back in our ancestral homeland, the land of Israel, in our ancestral lands of Judea and Samaria, and our ancestral and indivisible capital, Jerusalem, since King David's time. In the meantime, if you're not yet a subscriber, go to pulseofisrael.com and click to subscribe, and we are a donor-based operation, so every donation is critical to assist us in doing our work, making the videos, and getting them out there for more people to see them. In the meantime, everyone, Am Yisrael Chai.
Pulse of Israel, frontline videos from the Holy Land. Support our work by donating today.